This podcast is brought to you by the School of Advanced Study, University of London. All of our podcasts are available from our website, www.sas.ac.uk.
Okay, good afternoon everyone. Thank you for coming. I think you all know me, so I'll skip the introductions. But welcome to the School of Advanced Study, your home away from home. I'm very pleased to be able to host this talk with Ojot, Miru, Ojulu, who is here today to join us in presenting his PhD research, which is well advanced now. He is a PhD candidate at the Department of Peace Studies at the University of Bradford, and his research is on large-scale land acquisitions and indigenous people's rights to land under ethnic federalism in Ethiopia, a case study of the Gambella regional state. And that will be the main focus of his talk today. Previously, he's worked as part of his Peace Studies PhD program at the Institute for International Law of Peace and Armed Conflict in Miru University, Bradford. And prior to that, he was working for many years as a human rights defender and a peace builder in the Gambella region with various non-governmental organizations. And that's where we sort of came first in contact. So I've known Ojot since about 2005, I think. We met in Geneva at a training program on minority rights. And then subsequently he went on to take up a fellowship, a minority fellowship at the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in Geneva. And he's been doing some talks for our MA students for the last few years. And every year I ask him, would you like to come and present your PhD research as well? And so finally this year he said yes. So I'm pleased very much to welcome him. So he's going to speak for about 50 to 50 minutes, and then we'll have a chance for questions.
Thank you for the introduction again. Yes, I think as Corinne said, I've been coming here and speaking to MA students on my previous work experience, what I've been doing. And it's interesting to talk about my research, PhD research, what I'm doing today evening. As you can see from the title, I'm looking at large-scale land acquisitions, the political dynamics of large-scale land acquisition in Ethiopia, which is also part of my kind of extract from my bigger PhD thesis, where I'm looking at large-scale land acquisition in indigenous communities' rights to land under ethnic federalism, trying to see how the phenomenon of large-scale land acquisition is impacting indigenous communities' rights to land and its implication for the ethnic federal arrangement in Ethiopia. I think I will come to these issues shortly. Maybe as introduction, large-scale land acquisitions or land grabbing, as it is known by many nowadays. Many people use different terminologies, really referring to what I will be talking about. This trend began in 2007-2008 with the global food crisis and financial crisis and other factors as well. So I will come to that later, but to say about the outline of my presentation. Yes, I will do a brief introduction about large-scale land acquisition and my research question and the scope of my work, and also ethnic federalism and large-scale land acquisition, large-scale land deals in Ethiopia, in the Gambella region, and then come to the political dynamics of large-scale land acquisitions. causes and drivers of the contemporary large-scale land deals. The current large-scale land deals, as I already briefly mentioned, is associated with the food crisis in 2007-2008. What happened with the global food crisis was that not only the poor countries that were affected, but also the rich countries that are actually food dependent, that are depending on food import from other countries, were also affected by the global food crisis. So in that respect, some of the countries, especially the Gulf countries, made it as their national food security policy to outsource their food production, going to developing countries, acquiring land, sometimes directly or sometimes through private private investors, and supporting them in different ways, and secure their food. Secure the food security. And with financial crisis, 2007-2008, it's a little different from the one morning. Yeah. Yeah, so it's also associated with the financial crisis in the sense that due to financial meltdown, some of the traditional investors, hedge funds, pension funds, looked at land as a new source of profit. So they also went into acquiring land in developing countries as a new source of profit. And promotion of the biofuel, this is also another factor that is somehow contributed to land grab or global large-scale land deals, especially the EU renewable energy directives has some impact on this as well. But I think we can also bring into picture the receiving countries, not just as passive recipients, but over the years, those receiving countries have, especially in developing countries, have tried to promote investment in their agriculture and revise their policies and really make some incentives for investors to come and invest in their own countries. So it's not like global actors going to developing countries and trying to take land, but it's also governments in developing countries revising their policies and trying to attract investors. So the global picture of large-scale land deals, I mean, you have many reports. In 2009, these reports by 3 organizations, they claimed that 2.5 million, mainly in 5 African countries, that there were land deals that were concluded. The World Bank published a report in 2010 where they claimed 45 million land to be acquired by different investors. And there was a big land grabbing conference in 2011 at Sussex University, where different actors also presented, and they were talking about 80 million. And so there are different figures. Oxfam certainly was talking about 227 million hectares of land globally. The map is not an exhaustive one. It's not up to date. I was just found it on the internet. I was trying to look for a better one. It's the only one I could find. But as you can see, especially India is not mentioned. The red ones are the countries that are investing, acquiring land, and the green ones are the target countries. And so, for instance, India is one of the countries that is investing a lot in Ethiopia, and it's not market there. Another factor is also Brazil is marked as a target country, but is also investing in Mozambique and in other African countries. So it's just to say that the map does not really represent the overall picture of what's going on. If you have any question or clarification, please just feel free to stop me and ask. My research question and scope, as you can see, there are three themes that I'm trying to look at. You have the phenomenon of large-scale land acquisition, states and communities, and of course they interact with each other at different levels. And there have been many studies in different areas. And my emphasis is more on area number 3, where I try to look at how large-scale land deals affect the relationship between the state and the communities. And in Ethiopian case, this relationship is defined, articulated under the ethnic federal system. So that's why I'm bringing in ethnic federalism in the picture as well. So I'm asking, is the contemporary phenomenon of large-scale land acquisition in Ethiopia redefining indigenous communities' rights to land? And if so, what are the implications of this redefinition for the ethnic federal project? Ethnic federalism in Ethiopia, just as a brief introduction, is one of the oldest countries in Africa, and it has been a unitary state, very much controlled by the center. And until 1974, we had a monarchy, and then from 1974 to 1991, we had a military dictatorship, which was also very suppressive and repressive. And in 1991, we had a regime change where the overall structure of the country was actually changed. It was reconfigured into ethnic federal system where different regions were given certain, autonomy, constitutional autonomy from the center. And the right to self-determination was entrenched in the constitution. Actually, it is a bit radical also, because cessation is not only self-determination, but right to self-determination including cessation for the region. So in principle, regions of Ethiopia have the right to secede from the country if they fulfill some the constitutional requirements. And division of powers and land administration especially was devolved to regional states. Matters with the land were devolved to the regions. And all sovereign power resides in the nations, nationalities, and peoples of Ethiopia. Also like to emphasize that the constitution has mentioned nations, nationalities, and peoples about 21, 22 times. So nations, nationalities, and peoples are really at the center of the new political dispensation in Ethiopia. That these are the building blocks of the nation, of the Ethiopian nation. So what I want to say here is that under ethnic federalism, minorities places like the Gambella region and the Villagization region, which were really very tiny minorities. They were recognized as autonomous regional states, which was very, very, very positive compared to historical structuring of the historical Ethiopia. Also, land policies and legislations in Ethiopia under ethnic federal system, the constitution states that land ownership is exclusively vested in the state and the peoples of Ethiopia. So we have state land ownership. Land is not private property. And but there is also provision that peasants have the right to obtain land without payment and the protection against eviction from their position. This is also entrenched in the constitution because we have quite a big number of pastoralists in the east, in the Somalia region, and also in the region where I come from, the Gambella region, and some other regions as well. We have rural land administration and use proclamation, which actually also emphasized what is already provided for in the constitution, that is empowerment of the regional states to administer their own land. And there is expropriation of land holding for public purposes and payment of compensation proclamation. And this is also another proclamation that provides for, in case the land is needed for public purposes, that the communities could be compensated. Large-scale land deals in Ethiopia, when it comes to large-scale land deals, land grabbing, as it's known, it's not totally new. We had different, I would say, categorized them into different generations. The first generation being from 1990s to 2000, where it was mainly domestic investors acquiring quite a small size of land, and those land lease agreements were processed really at the local level, the local government level. And in those cases there were no displacement of communities. Second generation is related to cut floor industry, where actually from 2003 to 2007 we had foreign investors coming in floriculture, flower industry, in flowers and for export, and that became very, very successful. The government was, the country was getting foreign currency because there was a market in Europe and in other Western countries. So to a certain extent, these are also, because it is some of those investors that actually went into these big and huge large-scale land grabbing, like one Indian company, Karaturi. So third generation, which is the focus of my research, is where actually those large-scale land acquisitions were directed to minorities, no land. And in this case, the amount, the size of the land, and of course the speed of those agreements was also very, very, very fast. And here we're talking about one company taking 100,000 hectares of land, some 300,000 hectares of land. So this was completely new from the previous kinds of investments we've had in the country. And the centralization of the land investment process, that's also quite new. Before, land investments, the land lease agreements and negotiations were conducted at regional level, but with the rising interest in farmland, the central government centralized the process. So, in a sense, regional states and communities were marginalized from negotiation and participation into those land deals. Yeah, so as you can see, the main areas of those investments are the Benishangul Gumuz, where they're talking about 691,984 hectares. You have the Gambella region, about 1.5 million, the southern nations, nationalities and peoples regional estate, about nearly half million, and also the Oromia region and the Afar region from northeast of the country. So these are the areas in Ethiopia now where large-scale land investments are taking place. In the Gambella region, which is actually epicenter of large-scale land investment in Ethiopia, we are talking about 896 896 investors and over 700 hectares of land being leased out to investors already. 1.2 million hectares in federal land bank, which means to be marketed by the federal government. And totally this is about 42% of the land mass of the region being made available for investment. So I think you can see the implications of this practice. What does it mean where the 45% of land mass of the region, autonomous region, constitutionally, is managed by the central government, or actually by private companies. And 1/3 of the indigenous population are also relocated and displaced. Since 2010, they started a villagization program, which actually is a forced displacement in order to provide for the expansion of the already existing investors, or to make more land free for investment. So to come to the politics of land investments then, when you look at the map of land grabbing, or where those land investments are taking place, you can see an overlap, congruence between map of marginalization, historically marginalized area, minorities, and also the map of where those large-scale land positions are taking place. Actually, this is not. This is the government has publicly stated that their policy. This is a statement from the late Prime Minister, where he said on one conference that our policy is that in the lowland areas, these are areas which are marginalized, mainly inhabited by different indigenous communities and minorities. Where we have abundant and unutilized land, we would lease that to private sector. In the island, and where there is land shortage, we would allow the farmers to retain indefinite use rights. So the justification for directing large-scale land investment to minority regions is that there are large unutilized land in those areas, which I think is due to lack of understanding of the way of life of indigenous people, and also of pastoralists. And sometimes maybe it's also actually ignorance, because I think there are already some work on the life of those groups and pastoralists. And these regions are non-EPRDF member states. EPRDF is the ruling party, is the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front. And basically the ruling party is a coalition of 4 parties. And these 4 parties are made up of the major 4 groups in Ethiopia, ethnic groups, except one. One is not really one ethnic group, but a different coalition also of other groups. So basically the EPRDF is a coalition of these groups, of these ethnic groups, the dominant one historically. And in Ethiopia, how things work, the political party really is the major power in the country in terms of policies, in terms of decision making and development policies and all other aspects. So those lowland regions like the Gambella, the Benishangul, Afar, and Somali, they are not members of the EPRDF, they are not members of the ruling party, meaning that they don't have voice really in policy making of the country. So when those decisions of where to direct large-scale land investments and it's actually made without participation of the representatives of those minority regions. And in 2009, this unit was also formed under the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, which is called the Agricultural Investment Support Directorate. And the purpose of this directorate is to process large-scale land investment in those regions. And again, when you look at the objectives of this unit, it doesn't give any recognition to the ethnic federal system where land administration is given to regional states. So it's kind of took the power of land administration from those regions and then left those regions as just implementing bodies of the decisions made at the center. I've also analyzed some of the land lease contractual agreements, I mean the land deals, the actual lease agreements between those investors and the government. And of course, most of them, almost all of them, are made between private investors and the government, the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. And for obvious reasons, that land is state property in Ethiopia. There is no private. There is no private land ownership. And secondly, is mostly is mentioned in the literature sometimes that foreign governments going to Africa or developing countries and taking land. In the Ethiopian case, I think we don't have many like government-to-government direct land lease agreements, a foreign government taking land directly from the community, at least in the Gambella region. So most of them are private investors with backing of their native or country of origin, like there is a Saudi Star, which is mainly from Saudi Arabia, Karaturi and other mainly Indian investors. When you look at those agreements, those land lease agreements, what happened with the creation of the Agricultural Investment Support Directorate, the centralization process, even those agreements that were signed before at the regional state were revised to be rewritten again, and some of the strength of the new land lease agreements signed at the center, of course, were better rental rates from before, and also reduce the length of some land leases. Like one Indian company had signed 300,000 hectares of land with the regional government of Gambella, and when they centralized the process, they renegotiated the agreement, so it was reduced to 45 years, and the land was also reduced to 100,000, but they said, you know, if they become effective on the land that they've already acquired, then they can be given another 200,000. But yeah, there are some weaknesses in those, major weaknesses in those land lease agreements. First of all, there is no recognition, and start from the second one, for the land rights of the indigenous communities. Those agreements do not recognize and give that they didn't recognize the indigenous communities in those areas. So that's one big problem with those land lease agreements. And also, you don't find provisions with regard to food security. Those of you who were there today in the morning in the presentation, I mentioned that Ethiopia is one of the poor countries and it's known for farming. And for such a country, you would expect that food security would appear in such agreements, but Ethiopia is not the case. Actually, to the contrary, there is investment incentive regulation in which investors that export more of their products are incentivized. I mean, they get more incentives. The more you export, the better incentive. So in a sense, those land lease agreements are not primarily for domestic food security, but for export. And also, environmental impact assessment is made voluntary in those agreements. It's not must that there should be environmental impact assessment, which is another problem, because in many cases, for such big projects, it is required that there should be environmental impact assessment before the beginning or during operation of those kinds of projects, and this is not the case in Ethiopia. And with regard to water resources, I mean, it is now turned also not just land grabbing, but also water grabbing, because what's happening actually, investors are looking for land where there are water resources. And so there is no control or provisions with regard to how those investors could use the water resources in their areas. Monitoring, evaluation, and enforcement mechanism is also another problem where we don't have strong provisions of how those investments or projects could be monitored and evaluated. Another thing that the Ethiopian government is, and also the investors and actually supporters of these investments are claiming is selling land grabbing as a development opportunity, or for the Ethiopian government as a development strategy. And they talk about job creation. I think because of time I did research on job creation, looked at 4 projects where I looked at what kind of jobs have they created, who are working in these jobs, I mean, who are getting those jobs, and the wages in those jobs, how well are they paid. And so when you look at these issues, it's very disturbing, because when they feel they have investors, when they apply for investment, they fill investment form, investment certificate, and there they have to mention the amount of how many jobs they plan to create. And in some cases they will say, okay, we will create 7,000, 5,000. You have investors who have said they will create 5 or 7,000, but actually now maybe so far they have created only 700 jobs. 700.
And who are the people who are working in those jobs? Are they people from other areas of Ethiopia, local areas, or international?
Yeah, that is a very important one, because When you look at it, also different categories of jobs. You have the managerial positions, you have the technical, the advisory, monitoring, whatever positions, and you have the daily laborers jobs. Say out of these 700, maybe the management or medium level jobs could be only 30%. So the bulk of the jobs, those kind of jobs, are actually temporary jobs, 3 months, 4 months, and they are seasonal because they can change. And so it's not kind of permanent jobs that you displace farmers and you expect them to work and take care of their family, with those kind of jobs. So to your question, yes, in that case, I also look at it, and it's not indigenous communities, they are not benefiting from those opportunities. Mainly people from central part of Ethiopia who are getting those jobs, especially in like tractor operators and other machinery operators, because that's where you have a number of jobs. In one project, they have about, out of 96, what I see as technical job category, including tractor operators, machinery, and others. You have only 6 indigenous people out of 96, so it's very, very low, the participation, the involvement of indigenous communities. Food security. Already mentioned that, yes, the investment incentives already made it clear that the purpose of the government for promoting land investment is really to promote export and increase the foreign exchange currency rather than ensuring food security, domestic food security. Talk about technology transfer and increase in local tax income. The technology also, when you look at it, I think those farms are very, very mechanized. I mean, you have tractors and big machines, and the local people farm very traditionally with hand tools, and the gap between the technologies is too big. And they talk about technology transfer again. From hand tools to such a big mechanized is. I've looked at some literature, and I think they say for technology transfer to properly take place, there should be some, there has to be some, there should be some close, gaps. I think the gap is in the Gambella region is too high, and there is no policy document, to bridge the gap, the technological gap between those large-scale farmers and local communities. Local tax has increased. I mean, in some areas I've seen that there is an increase in the local tax income of the local government. But again, those tax increase is not used for the development of the respective districts of those in the region. Like when I was there, the schools and clinics were closed for 3 months because there were no salary for the nurses and the teachers. But the information I got from the Ministry of the Local Finance, their income could have actually covered, the salaries for clinics and for the teachers as well. But instead, this income is used mainly for allowances and other expenses of the district officials than really being directed to development of those districts, like taking care of the schools and clinics and other development programs. Villagization. Yes, I've already mentioned, since 2010, the government started the villagization program, And this program targeted mainly the areas that are also targeted for large-scale land investment for land grabbing. The government position is that we bring together those villages to make the provision of social services easy and to tackle flooding problem in some areas, food security, and also to move pastoralists to settle farmers and change their lifestyle and livelihood. While from the local communities, they see those villagization program as an attempt by the government to free more land for investments and also yes, to give away their land to investors. And as a way of bringing settlers from the island part of the country, because in 1980s we also had a big villagization program, and during the military regime where over 60,000 people were brought from the northern part of the country to Gambella region, and this was highly contested by those groups, indigenous groups, because they saw it as an attempt to assimilation of indigenous communities. And now people having those historical backgrounds, they see this again as another effort by the government to bring other settlers from other parts of the country. And of course also seen as a way to open up a way for extraction of other natural resources, like oil. There were some oil discoveries. I mean, still are working on it, but I think this is how most of the local communities perceive those land, or the villagization program. So I'm coming to the end. So to conclude, I think the impact of large-scale land acquisitions on the indigenous people's right to land and the ethnic federal system at large is actually what's happening is the institutionalization of centralization. Institutionalization of centralization, in the sense that efforts of centralization, although we have now a decentralized government, constitutional, a federal system, there were attempts by the governments to control the regions, but before those means of control were more informal and were carried out through informal structures and institutions. But now with the coming of the large-scale land investment, we are seeing an institutionalized form of centralization where institutions are created to centralize the powers that are constitutionally assigned to those regional states. The case in example is the Agricultural Investment Support Directorate, which is an official institution of the government that clearly mentioned in its objective to administer land in those regions. And control over rural populations and their means of production, I think what it is doing also to enhance the hand of the government over the rural population and their means of livelihood. And increased tensions and conflict in different ways between communities and also between communities and government. Actually, Gambella region is one of the conflict-prone areas. We have many different types of conflict. So I think this, in a sense, increases the already existing tensions and conflicts between different communities. And discrediting ethnic federal project in general, I think it discredits the ethnic federal arrangement and talk about empowerment of local communities and nations, nationalities, and peoples. And now decentralizing those powers and taking those powers from those communities, it puts into question how genuine is the ethnic federal arrangement, which puts into question its future definition. Thank you, and your patience.
Thank you.
Comments.
Okay, So we have about half an hour or so now for questions and discussion. Would like to be
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I was just thinking in terms of the restrictions that the government places on human rights organisations in Ethiopia. How are NGOs or organisations attempting to address this issue? Perhaps avoiding framing it in a language of access or rights to land. How are they sort of tackling this issue in the context, within the limits that they can work in Ethiopia?
Yeah, that is a very important question. With different organizations, the thing is, since 2008, 2009, the government introduced a law which is called Charities and Societies Proclamation, and this law divides NGOs into two, as domestic and foreign ones, and as foreign organization, you're automatically banned from doing any work in the area of advocacy, human rights, peace building, any kind of advocacy work. And in order to be classified as a foreign or local NGO, any organization that raises more than 10% of its income from outside Ethiopia, it would be automatically categorized as foreign NGO. So in a sense, many local organizations, even if the founding members, the board members, the directors are all Ethiopians, if they get more than 10% of their income from outside sources, they will be automatically classified as foreign. And so what happened is many organizations are actually restricted from doing any work on advocacy. So this is one of the challenges that this is happening with a very, very limited challenge domestically. And if you talk about land grabbing in Ethiopia, it's a very risky topic, and it's a very risky, it's a very sensitive issue. But you have other organizations, international organizations, working with some local organizations and publishing reports, and also you have many news media who have gone to Ethiopia under cover and reported extensively on land grabbing in Ethiopia.
Does the law recognize indigenous communities? Is there anything to define that defines indigenous communities?
It doesn't say indigenous community per se, like using the word indigenous.
Indigenous.
Yeah, so the law is not mentioned there. But pastoralists are seen as indigenous communities. You have other policies, government policies, where they actually mention indigenous, they talk of indigenous people. And also the place I'm talking about, the Gambella region, southwest, where I come from, the 5 ethnic groups in that region are also seen as indigenous, recognized the government as indigenous people of the Gambella region. So yes, the law does not directly say it, but when you look at other documents, policies, maybe not very legal documents, other reports, somehow there is recognition that there are indigenous.
And do those documents also say that these people have rights to land? Do these documents recognize native land?
Yeah, like the Constitution, Article 40, it exactly directly says that pastoralists have right to land and right not to be evicted from their lands. And I think that we have a situation where people could organize and claim their rights through free and fair legal system. I think there are some provisions, constitutional provisions, that farmers and indigenous groups could use to claim their rights, because these are mentioned there.
Are they doing that?
No. There are some cases. There is, actually it's not. Yeah, there are some cases come across. One case where two villages, their land was taken. One Indian company, there was land lease agreement that was signed, and then they complained to their immediate administrators, and they couldn't find, I mean, they were not satisfied with the answer. The immediate bosses, administrators, said this land lease is processed at the central level, so we are not really responsible. And they actually took their case up to the federal government level. They went at the federal level, they complained, and the Environmental Protection Authority actually also supported their claim, because they were defending their forest. I mean, they are forest people in the forest, and this forest is protected forest by. So actually, it's one branch of the government going against another branch, the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, kind of going against the Environmental Protection Authority, because these are protected under Environmental Protection. And so yes, there are some interdepartmental clash as well within the government itself. That's one area, and also another area is because some of the areas in Gambella that are actually leased to large scale land, investors are marked as national park, and we have wildlife authority, so it is also under the administration of the wildlife authority. Yeah, there are also some complaints from the wildlife authority that some of the lands and areas that are demarcated as national parks are now being given away.
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning. I don't know if you've spoken about this already. If there's any, what similarities you see between the Gambella situation and the Old North Valley and those areas connected to the Ojulu 3 dam and the consequences of that. I mean, that's one thing I wanted to ask. And secondly, this land grab strategy, of course, implies violence. And it looks very closely related to a political project of the central government, which dates back to the beginning of federalism and includes the Gambella massacre of 2003. Is this land grab project being implemented violently with arbitrary detentions of those who are attempting to resist or even to criticize, torture and extrajudicial execution? That's quite an important question you may want to touch on. And finally, sorry, you could say you can't answer more than one shot. In Eritrea, there's been substantial leverage on investment companies and gold mines there, linking it specifically to human rights violations in there, conscription, possible use of forced child labor. Is there any campaigning possibility of leverage on the foreign companies which are starting these schemes in Gambella? The companies, and I said the governments really defeated, who are basically either supporting it or resisting any kind of criticism.
Yeah, I mean, you seem to have very good knowledge of Ethiopia and of the region as well. Yeah, today I was talking about human rights advocacy in conflict situation with the example of Gambella, where I talk about my experience working as activist in the region as the issue of the Gambella massacre of 2003 that information. Yes, the South Omo case and the Gambella case are really very, very similar. And as you might know, so far in Ethiopia, the experience of it, like working across different regions has not been the case. I mean, in the Gambella region, we were more focused on the Gambella and the South Omo, and people focused on South Omo, on Asosa. And once in Addis, we had kind of informal conference really of different minority groups in Ethiopia coming together and discussing issues, and it was striking to hear from people from South Home the issues they are facing, how similar are they with the issues that we're also facing in the Gambella region and also in Villagization, those regions. And it's the same claim. I mean, now in South Omo, yes, there is the dam project, and also the sugarcane project, which is very, very big now, and it's taking really huge place in South Omo as well. And yes, a lot of displacement. And when you look at, if you were there when I mentioned the land that is allocated to federal government or put in the federal land bank for marketing by the federal government, I think the big portion of the land that is mentioned under the Southern nationalities and peoples is actually area in the south, from the South Omo area, from South Omo area. So yes, I just agree that yes, there is a lot of similarity between what's going on in Gambella and South Omo, and that is why I come to the conclusion that there is an overlap between the map of marginalization, historically marginalized groups, and the map of land grabbing, where you see where land grabbing is taking place now in Ethiopia, is actually taking place in the regions or among the communities that have historically been marginalized from, so to say, the mainstream Ethiopian society. Another question about Eritrea, if you mentioned. Eritrea, I don't really have good knowledge of what's going on in Eritrea. I mean, the extractive mining work and other extractive industries. Yes, apart from what I read of the news, don't really have enough knowledge of Eritrea. And
well, the Canadian investment companies and the gold mines are being called to account in the Canadian Parliament. It's a very serious issue. And
they are investing in Eritrea,
in the gold mines,
in the gold mine,
Eritrea, which are connected with massive use of forced labor.
That's a good point. In the Gambella, though, what we have, I think they have now some oil exploration, Gambella from China and Malaysia, those companies operating in the Ogaden region, in the Somali region. They were in Gambella in 2004-05, and from 2004-05 they were also.
So I think Martin's question was, are any of those companies being held to account in their home countries for actions within?
Yeah, sorry for that. I forgot that part. Yes, there are some attempts. In one case, one organization, a law firm here in the UK, actually contacted some because of land grabbing now, many people in the Gambella region actually left the region, went to South Sudan or to refugee camp in Kenya because they could not afford to live in those settlement areas at all, and they went to refugee camps. And Human Rights Watch report on villagization indicated that somehow some deficit fund is used for the villagization program because the government sells it as development. We are trying to put villages together and to make provision of social services possible, and they say the deficit fund has helped those the government do the villagization program, and they are working with the farmers who are displaced. The law firm here in the UK saying that yes, the UK government has contributed to our displacement in the villagization program. I don't know, I don't have up-to-date information about how it is going, but I know there was such a case.
I think Martin had one more question about the use of violence in land Bradford?
Yeah, that is also, I mean, the fact that many farmers are now leaving the Gambella region and going to refugee camps is also related to the violence that is attached to Villagization program, because in some cases those farmers who resist, I mean, it's really forced displacement what's going on in the region. And once you are told to move, and if you resist, either you face imprisonment or beatings or torture, and some people left because of different kinds of levels of violence. So yes, there is huge military presence now in the Gambella region, and most of all of those land investments are protected by the military, and the Villagization program is also accompanied by the military. So when the local governments go out accompanied by the military, so there's huge violence related to land.
So what is the solution?
Sorry?
What is the solution you have identified?
I'm not to that stage yet. Yeah, no, I think, yes, creating awareness, I think, is one step of what is going on in the region, because, yes, there are very limited, there are ways, but the system is very, very difficult, I mean, for the people that operate on their own. So I think creating national awareness, I think that's good. I think it's a promising step. Now there is a national awareness in Ethiopia that land grabbing is going on. It's not only a question now of, say, Gambella people or South Omo. Actually, you have people from the north who are also saying, you know, these are Ethiopian people and this is Ethiopian land being given away. And this has not been the case before. So I think the fact that there is some solidarity, a network being developed is one step, and I think we should maybe build more on that and work together with other Ethiopian communities and also international campaigners and advocates.
Sorry, I have another problem-based question. Drawing from the question on Eritrea, I was just wondering, in terms, because you spoke a bit about the job creation in the areas where land grabbing has happened, but do you know of cases also of informal work and of forced labour or exploitation, particularly of children? Because I know there's cases of child labour in other parts of the country.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very controversial one. Yes, there are cases, yes, those who work on those farms, most of them are children. In some cases, I mean, like aged 11, 12, 13, 14. I mean, doing the labor work sometimes, picking or watering when they do seedlings, and especially the Karatui company. There was a report. I mean, not big an official report, but kind of an article on that where they are mentioned about exploitation of children only with regard to one company, one specific area. But I think it's not only limited to that area. And the thing is, the laws are very relax. I think the local government officials and even the regional don't think that they also really are aware of those child rights and those laws that protect children. So there is also lack of, I think, capacity from the region and from the local government level to enforce whatever international laws Ethiopia has accepted.
But even if they were aware, do you think they'd care?
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I don't know, maybe in case of children and child rights, and maybe the local government, but they can also argue if they want to support their families or parents, and there are some other counter arguments.
More questions?
Somber. Very depressing.
Sorry.
Well, we can go
I couldn't make it better.
It's the reality.
That's the reality. Yeah.
It is.
Yes. Well, I'd just like to thank Ojot for his presentation and sharing his research, which is obviously very rigorous, and I expect not without some risk in collecting some of the data that you talked about. So I think the case study you present is useful not only for understanding Ethiopian situation, but for comparative analysis in many other countries that include some we've talked about that are facing similar issues. So it's extremely valuable research, and I hope it's widely used and beneficial for those who are fighting for justice in these cases. And we wish you all the best in defending your PhD this year. So please join me in a final thank you for Ojot.